So, how do you measure something you can't even see? Today, we're going to get into the surprisingly complex science of measuring happiness and how researchers turn our most personal, subjective feelings into actual, solid data. Okay, let's dive in. Just think about that for a second. How happy is your city? Is your community really thriving? Are people feeling connected, fulfilled, like they have a purpose? Answering this isn't just a fun thought experiment. It's a super important question for policymakers and, honestly, for all of us. But right away, it brings up a massive challenge.
And this, right here, is the heart of the problem. How do you take something as personal and, as woolly as well-being and make it rigorous? How do you give it that punch so that it can actually drive real change? Well, believe it or not, it all starts with a couple of golden rules.
Right, so to turn something fuzzy into something concrete, researchers have to follow two golden rules. These are the absolute fundamentals that make sure the data they collect isn't just noise, but is actually meaningful information.
First up is reliability. And you can just think of this as consistency. If you step on your bathroom scale and it says 150 pounds, you expect it to say 150 pounds again if you step on it a minute later. That's a reliable tool. It gives you the same result over and over.
But here's the thing. Reliability isn't enough. Not by a long shot. You also need validity. And this is all about accuracy. Is your tool actually measuring the thing you think it's measuring? That reliable bathroom scale, it's not a valid tool for measuring your height, right? The measurement has to hit the right target.
And this is where it all clicks into place. A heart rate monitor, for example, is incredibly reliable. It consistently and accurately measures your pulse. But is it a valid way to measure your overall happiness? Well, no. Your heart rate could be skyrocketing because you're super stressed out, or because you just had a fantastic run. See, a reliable tool is not always a valid one.
So, keeping those two rules, reliability and validity, in mind, how do researchers actually go about collecting this data? Well, today, they have this amazing toolbox, and it's full of everything from old-school methods to some seriously cutting-edge tech. The most direct tool, of course, is the classic survey. If you want to know how people feel, just ask them. It's a straight line into someone's personal experience. But, and this is a big but, the way you ask the questions changes absolutely everything.
See, even with a simple survey, there's a constant trade-off. You could ask a simple yes or no question. That's super fast and easy to analyze for thousands of people, but it gives you almost no detail. Or you could ask a really open-ended why question. That gives you incredibly rich, detailed information, but it's a total nightmare to analyze at scale. It's always this balancing act between speed and depth.
Okay, but what if you didn't even have to ask people directly? This is where it gets really interesting. With big data, researchers can now tap into the massive public conversation happening online to basically take the emotional temperature of an entire city in real time.
It's called sentiment analysis. Basically, really smart programs can scan millions of public posts, like tweets, and analyze the language. They're trained to look for words that have positive or negative feelings attached to them, and they use that to build a huge, constantly updated picture of the public mood.
The third tool in the box is maybe the most personal of all: well-being wearables. So instead of analyzing what you type or asking how you feel, this tech measures the actual physical signals your body is sending out, moment to moment.
Think about it. Your smartwatch can already track things like your sleep patterns, your physical activity, even your heart rate variability, which can be a really good indicator of your stress levels. It's this incredible attempt to find objective, physical clues to our subjective emotional worlds.
So, when you put it all together, surveys, big data, wearables, we have never had more powerful ways to understand what makes people tick on a truly massive scale. The potential here is just enormous. And you knew there was a but coming, right? This is a huge one. Just because we can collect mountains and mountains of data, that doesn't automatically mean it's good data. Having the tools is one thing, using them correctly is a whole different ballgame.
Because it turns out, trying to collect good data over a long period of time is like walking through a minefield. It is filled with hidden traps that can mess up the results for even the most careful researchers. Let's take a look at some of the biggest ones.
Researchers have to worry about all sorts of things. Like, how often should they even collect data? What do they do when people inevitably drop out of the study? Are they using the right kind of math to analyze it all? But maybe the most fascinating and tricky pitfall is this idea that your measuring stick itself can actually change over time.
So let's zoom in on that idea, the changing yardstick, because it really shows you how complicated this work gets. The official name for this problem is maturational transformation. And what that means is that a test can actually start measuring a totally different skill or concept as time goes on, even if the test has the exact same name. This is a huge problem, especially when you're trying to study people who are changing really fast, like little kids.
Get this. This is a real example from a study on infant development. Researchers used a standard test and found that the average scores for the same group of kids actually went down between 9 months and 27 months of age. Now, it's not because the toddlers were getting less smart. It's because the test was secretly measuring completely different cognitive skills at those two ages. The yardstick itself had changed. Mind-blowing, right?
So, after navigating all of that, defining your terms, picking your tools, trying to avoid all these crazy pitfalls, why? Why go to all this trouble in the first place? What's the real point?
Well, it really comes down to one big idea: building better communities. For decades, we've pretty much only measured our progress with economic numbers, like GDP. This is all about creating a more human-centered way to measure progress, one that gives leaders the data they need to make decisions that actually improve people's lives.
Because at the end of the day, that's really what this is all about. It's about getting a better handle on the universal things that let all of us flourish. Things like our relationships, our environment, and that deep down sense of purpose and belonging.
And so that leaves us with one final question for you to think about. If we had a perfect, real-time dashboard that showed the well-being of your town or your city, what's the very first thing you would want to see us try and change for the better?